So I made a Shu fan game about a year ago, and I wanted to talk a little bit about it because I think a lot of the ideas were really cool, and I'd honestly love to see some of the ideas in there picked up at some point because I probably want to have a chance to develop them further. But I think there were some good ideas in there that, yeah, I'd love to see taken up. So Shu from Arknights, I won't go too much into her character, but when I was designing the game, I wanted to design a boss battle around her metaphor, like a metaphorical boss battle that encapsulates what Shu's real object was, which is this project to create massive amounts of agricultural fields in order to feed humanity, based on a promise to someone back in her history. So how do you turn like like 1,000 years of struggling to improve agriculture into a boss battle? That's the premise. And what I ended up doing is it is the battle is not particularly done by Shu, but she works as a supporter for two human units in the battle, who represent farmers and I think academics, if I recall correctly. Unfortunately, I lost the base files, so it's like I'm doing a lot of this out of memory. I don't have my notes and things like that, or like the game files anymore. They got lost in a hard drive incident. But So you've got these two human characters that Shu is supporting. Shu basically helps keep them alive and increase their effect, while they attack the boss, whose HP is basically the amount of fields remaining to develop. So it's like the target is 10,000 fields. So as you deal damage to the boss, that represents you constructing more fields. And then to represent the cyclic nature of the struggle, of how parents pass on the struggle for agriculture to the children, the struggle to survive, but things generally get easier over time, things like that. Basically, to represent the generational and long-term nature of this project, the fact that it spanned like 1,000 years or however long it's been. I gave the human characters an ability that basically represents a new generation taking on the task, stepping up to the plate. So it fully heals at the cost of one turn. Either human character can fully heal themselves and remove any debuffs or status effects or whatever that are on them, basically symbolizing the prior generation has passed away, new generation is here to take up the work. They're starting fresh. Which that felt like I love that, just like conceptually. I love stories about generational struggles and inheritance and like heritage, like an inherited fight. There's a lot of literature talking about how like, oh, I don't want to take up like I want to be an individual, so I don't want to do what my ancestors did. But it's like there's also a really cool thing in recognizing we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's like our ancestors have done wonderful things to survive and to build humanity into what it is today, and taking up their struggle and finishing it is incredibly noble. So I like that a lot. And in general, it's like cross-generational work is just incredible. It's wonderful to see in history where people like agree on a goal and work for it for a long time across generations. And there's not like the sense of acrimony between different generations. But anyway, in addition to that, the thing that so this move is in like any RPG pretty much incredibly busted. Like the ability to spend one turn to fully heal, with no downsides. It makes sense for this fight because you're fighting abstract concepts like war and hunger and famine, and each generation does struggle with it. And of course each use represents a new generation taking on the fight. So that's really so it made sense lore wise to do this, and it actually resulted in a really interesting design space as well, because it allowed me to give the boss all kinds of busted abilities that normally you can't just hand out. and it turns into like a really heavy hitting, like both sides end up having to have really heavy hitting abilities to balance around the ability to fully heal in a single turn. So like famine, and I tried to base it off of like things that would threaten a human population in real life. So like extremely rapid like decay with like disease or like famine completely preventing action, things like basically like normally it's like if you've only got two characters to work with, if one of those gets stunned, that's really dangerous. And basically, like both the boss and the characters, the players are fishing for combos that are dramatically more powerful than than you would in a normal RPG, because that's the only way to get an advantage, where both sides are extremely strong, extremely durable on the boss's side, and like be able to throw out like like 2 or 3 turn stuns, or like extremely strong crowd control abilities, things like that. And if the boss can't secure like a combo, then you're just going to heal back up to full. So then it becomes the player's prerogative to figure out how to prevent the boss from comboing them. Like basically, like working to prevent that. So it is a really interesting design space, and I'd love to see that kind of thing developed more. Because obviously, most RPG battles are designed around HP loss, and like generally speaking, HP loss is relatively permanent. And certainly, it's not so easy to just come back to the top of fighting condition. Let alone to like let the player fully heal instantly an infinite amount of times, as often as they want, as long as they're not CC'd. So I think there's a lot of like there's an interesting design space to do with that. And that's really why I enjoyed working on a lot of what I enjoyed about working on the fan game is I love Shu's story, her narrative of like cross-generational struggle to make humanity work, to make like life good, and to provide for others, even if it requires significant self-sacrifice, and even if it requires generations and generations of struggle without necessarily like achieving the goal. So I love all the themes, and I love the agriculture is just such an important human project. And it is just worth remembering that like up until the 1800s, it's like 90% of humanity was involved in agriculture. Now it's only like it's less than 10% or whatever. It's like the numbers are roughly in those areas. So it's like it's insane that we've gone from like a culture where agriculture was everyone's business to no one, to very few people. And that is kind of the fruits of like a Shu-like project. Like incredible projects to make agriculture more efficient and safer, secure against famine and pestilence and warfare, and all these complex questions of supply chain and like bioengineering and all these things that are just genuinely incredible, and have like just an incredible blessing that we have as as contemporary humans, to have this extraordinary agricultural system that doesn't require that it sustains a massive amount of humans with very little, like comparatively little human input. To say nothing of how that has reshaped poverty and wealth across the world. So very, very cool thing to think about. Very much worth exploring more. Also very much worth exploring more like generational mechanics, games where you're playing as like across generations as a protagonist, like where each protagonist just represents a single generation. There are a handful of games about it, but like none of them have been like terribly philosophical from what I'm aware. So that's a bit of a shame. But it's a very cool space to work in. You can end up with really interesting ideas, including how to design fights when you're allowed to fully heal instantly and constantly. That's very interesting. And like designing fights around that. I'd love to do it more. I'm unfortunately pretty busy these days, but yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. And I'll just leave it at that. Let's do our best to think and wonder at incredible things, and see see humanity grow and survive. See y'all on the flip side, and take care.